Hey, what's up, everybody? This is NorbCam coming at you with a brand new segment, which I like to call the Dive In with Dovinh. And why am I calling it the Dive In with Dovinh? Well, I'm very excited because I'm announcing officially today that I've got a brand new returning sponsor of the NorbCam show. Yes, Daniel Dovinh is back. He was here for a little bit last year sponsoring my content. And now with the season in full effect, I'm excited to be partnering with Daniel Dovinh again. So I'm going to bring him on right now to talk a little bit about what he's doing with his business and why he decided to partner up with me again. So without further ado, here he is, Mr. Daniel Dovinh of Dovinh Real Estate Group at Sotheby's. Daniel, welcome back to NorbCam.
Hey, thanks a lot, Norb. Really happy to be here. Happy to be part of your community again. Last year was a lot of fun, so thought I would support you again. And the main reason I'm here is because I align with your values. I align with you as a Seattleite and a major Seahawks fan. And, being from here, it's great to align with, also you're a dad. I have a daughter, you have a daughter. You actually have multiple daughters. But just aligning values there and being able to support you and your work is fantastic. And we have some pretty exciting announcements in my world as well. I just started a real estate group at Sotheby's, at Marketplace, Sotheby's International Realty in Bothell specifically, and excited. We have a 7-person team to help serve a lot more clients. And so very excited that Dovinh Real Estate Group just got started to serve more people in the greater Seattle area.
So I'm really excited about this partnership. I thought we had a great time last time, and this year I want to have you even more involved. And that's why I created this segment called the Dive In with Dovinh, because you're not just a guy who's trying to, help my channel for all the reasons you mentioned, but you're also a Seahawks fan, which is kind of a prerequisite if you're going to be sponsoring my show. So tell everybody a little bit about your history here in Seattle and how your Seahawks fandomness comes into play.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my parents came to this country in 1975. And at the time, the Seahawks colors were a lot different, a lot of silver in the old school helmet. And, my family has a history of supporting the Seahawks through all of the terrible years and all the way through, 2005 being an awesome run. And then obviously 2013 and 14. And my parents tell this story of my grandpa, one thing he was very passionate about was watching Seahawks games, and he was notorious for smoking cigarettes when he got really stressed about the game and would throw his slipper at the TV if we had some terrible turnover or something like that. So those kind of fun stories is what I grew up with, and it's the only team that we've ever followed. I was born in Ballard in Seattle. And I'm a diehard Seahawks fan, and that's what I'll always be. And that's what my little toddler daughter is going to be when she gets a little bit older as well. So that's our history. I know nothing else besides, what we have here. So very excited for, the longevity we've had with this winning streak with Pete Carroll and John Schneider, Russell Wilson, and the whole crew. So very excited for this time to be alive. Honestly, very grateful that we're always competitive now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is a great time right now. I think if you're in the whole real estate business, especially if you're selling a house, the market has been crazy. So it's good to have somebody who can kind of guide the way here, and you're in a great position to do that. So we'll definitely, at the end of the show, I'll every week when we do this, I'll ask you for a tip or a message or concept or something of the week that you'll offer to everybody. And for those of you who are in the market, either looking to sell or buy, hopefully there'll be something in here that you might learn from Daniel, from his real estate expertise. So, but first we got to get into the thing that really matters here, and it's in the talk, in the title above. We're going to dive in to what happened this past weekend against the Titans. Now, by the time this segment airs, I will have done some of my own breakdowns and talking about what happened with the Seahawks and my take on what I thought was the issues that the Seahawks had and what they need to work through. But let me throw it your way. When you watched this game unfold, what was your feeling? Because it went from feeling pretty good. I'm sure all of us at halftime thought, yeah, this is about what we expected. We're kicking butt. We're doing good. And then the second half happened, and it was like, what just happened? It felt like you just got run over by a train. So what was your reaction to, by the time the dust settled and you digested what had just happened in this game, what was your take on what the Titans did to us on Sunday?
Yeah, my initial take obviously is disappointment, right? Because of the super hot start and having such a big lead. I remember checking this, the score because I had to leave for a short amount in the second quarter, and I was like, "Oh, we got this," and then the game just went wrong in all sorts of ways. But when I take a step back at it, before the season started, I looked at the schedule and I saw the Titans coming to town, right? And I actually really respect their head coach, Mike Vrabel, right? And he's got the history with the Patriots. And, they were a playoff team last year. They obviously brought on Julio Jones. There's King Henry in their backfield, right? They're not a terrible team. And so they have all these offensive weapons, but then you have a defensive head coach that knows what he's doing, that is very innovative. And I thought this would be a challenging game. Now, did I think we'd lose it in the fashion we did? Absolutely not. That was a terrible way to lose. The big takeaways are, this is a big learning experience. We're a very young team, which in the grand scheme of things is an excellent thing, right? All of our big playoff runs, we were one of the youngest teams in the league. And I think right now we're probably in the youngest third of the league. I would say top 10 youngest teams overall, right? Who's our oldest player? Like, I don't know, Al Woods, like maybe, like Bobby and Russell are now veterans, right? That's weird to think about because they're in the early 30s, right? So that being said, I think we had a lot of undisciplined things, right? Maybe a little lack of focus. We missed an extra point, right? We had that terrible kind of unnecessary roughness out of bounds by Jordan Brooks. That was not a good place to do it, right? It helped them get into the red zone. We also had, DJ Reed should never be talking smack to a Hall of Famer, right? Julio Jones for no reason. Things like that, obviously self-inflicted penalties on offense as well. So whenever you have 10 plus penalties and at least 100 yards against yourself, it's going to be really hard to win. Every other metric was pretty decent, though. We, as Pete Carroll said, we won the turnover battle, right? We took care of the ball. Carson had a pretty good first half. We had great numbers to lock it, but we didn't do what we're supposed to do, which is finish. Pete Carroll always talks about finishing, doing the right thing longer, playing really good defense, and taking care of those details. Well, we failed on all those things, and yet we still had a chance to win. So I would say it's a learning experience for a young team to get your details right, and we need to mature a little bit in our discipline, right? From DJ Reed to Jordan Brooks to DK Metcalf. All those guys are really young. So the positive thing is it's a long season, and they're hopefully going to have long careers with us. And I think that this will be better for us in the long run.
You brought up, excuse me, you brought up the penalty from DJ Reed on the taunting. And if you watch it, it doesn't look like he did that much. I mean, he kind of just flexed a little bit looking down at him. But this year, the referees really emphasized how they're going to call taunting a lot more. And the tolerance level is going to be really short on this. So that was just a decision the referees made for this 2021 season. And so the players have just got to be aware of that. Even though last year or any of the years before, that never would have been called. What he did was so minimal, but it's kind of like roughing the passer. You cannot touch that quarterback. And I still think one of those calls was so, when Jamal Adams hit him and got called for roughing the passer, he's flying in, full speed. It's hard to slam on the brakes and not touch the guy when you are just like a heat-seeking missile, right? But that's the rule. So you got to just find a way to, best you can, do it, especially the ones with the personal foul ones, hitting guys out of bounds, the taunting thing. You just got to be aware of that stuff. And so, yeah, the penalties were a huge, huge thing. 100 yards in penalties. I mean, that's just not acceptable. You get triple digits in penalties, you're definitely, digging yourself a hole. So what would you say were you kind of brought up those key points that were there, but what was the main, I'd say, what was if you could say one thing that if you could turn it back and if we had just done that one thing, what do you think would have made the difference in this game?
I would say establishing the run and short to intermediate passing. I mean, we had no completions to tight ends, for example. We didn't have much in the middle of the field. And, when you stop using Chris Carson, that's a bad sign, right? Our defense was on the field a lot because we stopped running the ball. We didn't play complementary football. If I could kind of put it in one nutshell, second half, we did not play complementary football. We were on defense a lot. We're not having much time on offense, moving the ball, matriculating the ball down the field. And so that's what I would say. If it was one thing, it's that. I put it on the offense. If you're going to put up that many points in the first half, what do you expect us to think as fans? Yeah, that you're going to keep doing it. And, if you look at the competition in the NFC, right? Like the Packers can put up numbers, the Saints can put up numbers. Obviously, the Bucks put up 48 points. So us talking about, if we score 30, we should be able to win. Like, no, you should score more than the opponent, whatever it takes that week. And it's going to be different week to week. But I would say, we weren't disciplined and we stopped moving the ball on offense, which was a major, major problem.
Yeah, it's your points definitely were there, and I think the Titans adjusted to us. They saw things weren't working, and they made changes on defense, particularly to stifle our offense. I don't know if we did the same thing because it seemed like we just sort of kept running our head into a brick wall, and they really shut us down. Offensively was really the reason why we didn't succeed in closing that game because we lost the time of possession. First downs, we barely had the ball in the second half, and we just couldn't make that key play when it came down to it. We needed a first down here or there, or we needed an extra point to be executed. We just needed one play to happen, and I think we would have any point in that, especially that fourth quarter, because we still had a 2-touchdown lead to start that fourth quarter, and they just could not do it. We just didn't make the play and made too many mistakes. So we look ahead now to the Vikings game coming up. Weird to say that we're 1-1 and we're last place in our division, but that's the reality. That's how good this division is. Everybody's 2-0, we're 1-1, and we're in last place looking up. So this is kind of a must-win game. Now that we're out of the AFC mode, we're now playing NFC teams. We need to, we can't afford to drop too many more here because the schedule gets no easier because then we got the 49ers, the Rams right around the corner. It's a little scary. So we kind of need to win this game. So on the road in Minnesota, last year, as you guys recall, we barely beat the Vikings by the skin of our teeth with a heroic last-minute drive, with a heroic stand on fourth down to keep the Vikings from stealing the game in a game where they dominated us pretty much for the first 3 quarters, or first 2 quarters until we roared back with a comeback. So I don't think we can play that kind of game to get started. So what's the key? What can we do to, what have we learned to make it so that we can get a win against the Vikings on Sunday?
Great question. Well, we've kind of had the Vikings number over the last couple of years, but that doesn't really mean anything, right? It's what have you done for me lately in the NFL? I really like Mike Zimmer. I think he's a great coach. I think he's a great mind. And so I definitely don't think we should take this team lightly. They have a lot of weapons, and Dalvin Cook is the main problem. And then you also have Jefferson as their young wide receiver. He's super dynamic, right? So I would say that our team was built on speed, right? 2 days ago, it would have been great to have KJ Wright. Why? Because he would help us with the run fits. He's also a bigger dude. It's easier to tackle someone like King Henry when you have Bobby and KJ, right? But we built our team on speed to go against guys like Dalvin Cook and to go against guys like Alvin Kamara, right? So I really think it's about stopping the run. I think everything starts and ends with the running game for the Minnesota Vikings. They're kind of old school in that way, but he's a very different runner than King Henry, right? King Henry's going to keep punching you in the mouth all game until he breaks out some big ones. And that's what I think Chris Carson wants to actually do. And that's how he's built his body, his mind, and we need to use him as such. But that's a whole different thing. So I would say the run fits are most important, right? Do we have Brian Monet for this game? Is Al Woods going to be tired? Poona Ford? Where's LJ Collier? Are we now feeling the strain of losing Jaron Reed, right? The interior line has not been really, really solid, probably since the days of Brandon Mebane, or Red Bryant, or, even, obviously the Legion of Boom days, right? All those guys were interchangeable on the inside, like Michael Bennett, right? And so people like Kerry Hyder and Poona Ford, they're asked to do a lot, right? They're kind of these in-between D tackles, but they're not these huge, like 380-pound dudes, right? So long and short of it is we need to stop the run. So that's going to be a lot of linebacker discipline, right? Jordan Brooks taking the right angle, Cody Barton taking the right angle, Bobby commanding those guys up front. Hey, how are we going to do this? Because last game, second half, where was our pass rush? I'm not saying it's easy because they had to think about King Henry, right? So they have to play the run, and that's the problem. You got to stop the run first, and then worry about everything else. So I think the game will be won or lost on how well Dalvin Cook plays.
And going back to that point of stopping the run, in the first half of that game, we had stopped the run. We kept King Henry to, I think, 35 yards on 13 carries. And Carson ended up the game with the same number of carries. He also only had 13 carries, if my information is correct. So they stuck with the run and made adjustments and wore us down, whereas we didn't stick with the run. And really, we just didn't do anything in the second half. It was just that whole thing where I think it was a situation where the defense worked their butts off for the first half, and then in the second half, the offense didn't, like you said, complement the other side. So they just got tired. They just got worn out because they were on the field for so much longer. So the offense has got to help out the defense as well as the defense doing their own part. And definitely not having unnecessary penalties, because that's what resulted in them being on the field longer. So it's just all these things compounding. But I feel like they've got the ability. We've seen it. We saw it for a half. But now they've got to play it throughout the entire game. So what about offensively? So we got to stop the run against the Vikings. What do we need to do? One of the big concerns on my side is what is going on with DK Metcalf. It's definitely not the start that we thought he would have as our superstar of the future, because I had a lot of people I talk to think, when I say Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, which one would you rather have? I say Tyler Lockett because he's the proven one. DK Metcalf has the higher ceiling, but as we've seen, he has to make sure his mind is right. And I'm not sure what's going on with all the penalties he's had. And he really didn't rise up and make any big plays for the Seahawks against the Titans. So I bring that into the question as well. But what do we have to do offensively to not repeat the same mistakes of what happened against the Titans?
Right. So is this his second or third year, DK?
This is his third year.
Third year, right? So at this point in 5 years now, he's had an offensive coordinator at Mississippi. He had an offensive coordinator here, and then he's got a third one in 5 years, just to give him a little bit of grace, right? He's also really, really young, right? If you gave me that many millions of dollars as a first or second round draft pick, I would have been a terrible person at age like 23, 24. Right? I can't imagine the pressure because he's actually in a contract year, right? So in theory, if he plays well, he could be looking at $20+ million a year in some contract extension, right? So I honestly think he has a lot of pressure on himself. He obviously wants to be the best in the world. He's facing Julio Jones, who's his hero, right? And he plays bad, right? He gets in his head. He's too busy talking smack or trying to truck people over instead of, having the discipline. And it's really hard, right? When you're a wide receiver and you got your emotions going, it's hard to be disciplined and know that it's a running play and you're just going to have to block the guy. It's not what you want to do, right? But it's those details that make someone like Larry Fitzgerald amazing, right? And that's on the reverse side. That's what made, for example, Richard Sherman a great cornerback, is he was willing to come up and tackle people and run support, right? And he was great defending, the long ball. So that's what you got to be in the NFL if you want to be an all-time great. You have to be good at everything, and it's not easy. And it's all about the details. And right now, the defense is bracketing DK. In the first two games, they're putting two guys on him. sometimes with a third guy shadowing him. And that's why Tyler has gone off. So someone's going to have to take the pressure. And right now it's DK, because teams are choosing to have Tyler hurt them instead of DK. So that's a part of it. And I think, just on offense, Shane Waldron's, these are the growing pains, right? This is the second actual game he's ever called, and this will be the third. So he needs to learn how to make those adjustments. I was actually pretty disappointed in our offense and defense for the inability to adjust to what the Titans were doing. So that's what I want to see as we preview the Vikings game. How can we win that chess match? Because it's been 2 games in a row now where we come out in the second half, in the third quarter, and we just kind of lay an egg. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of juice. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, big time. I just think, again, we couldn't get any kind of drives going. And, man, talk about things we couldn't adjust to and what we couldn't do ourselves. When you talk about the intermediate and the short passes, how many times were the Titans throwing to running backs, checking down out of the backfield, and we'd have wide open spaces, and they could just, and Henry especially, could just run. You give him that much space, he's going to get a first down on you. And they kept doing it over and over and over and over again, to the point where it's like, somebody stop that play. They're throwing to the running back every single time, but they couldn't do it. They just couldn't handle it. So, So I'm with you, man. I'm hopeful that Shane Waldron, we're putting a lot of faith into the Shane Waldron system, that he's going to, continue to learn and adjust. But it is growing pains. He's also young in terms of the system, being as an offensive coordinator. So we can't expect everybody to just be perfect their first time out. The good thing is we do have a 17-game season, so it's a long season. We're only in, game number 3 coming up, so it's not time to panic yet. I mean, for crying out loud, we haven't even played anyone in the NFC, and we haven't played anybody in our division yet. So for the people who are already, people after that game were already like, oh man, the season's over. I was like, calm down. It's only game number 2. We got plenty of games to go. So what's your prediction on this game? What do you think's going to happen?
I honestly think it's going to be way closer than I want it to be. I think it's really hard to beat a franchise this many times over the last 5 years. If you look at the winning percentage of the Seahawks versus the Vikings the last several years, it's ridiculous. We beat them in the playoffs. We beat them in regular season. We're obviously in the same conference. But I don't think this is the week that we put everything together. I think we will have those weeks where everything is hitting on every cylinder. But, I wish, Eskridge, for example, was healthy, because, last week you didn't see any of these fly sweeps or any of these kind of gadgets or a lot of pre-snap motion. Again, we talked about not having a lot of tight end work or any, passes to Chris Carson, in the flat, anything like that. It was kind of it felt like Brian Schottenheimer's offense, to be honest with you. So long story short, I think it's going to be within 7 points, and I honestly think it can go either way. So would I be surprised if we won by 6 or lost by 6? No. But as a Seahawks fan, my prediction is that we're going to win by 6 points. I think we're going to go a little bit more old school, a little bit more possession football, and we're going to win 23-17.
Oh, low scoring game. All right. Well, I agree with you. I think it's going to be tight. I'm going to stick with my music prediction video prediction, because now that I put it on tape, I've got to kind of stick with it. We were supposed to win that game last week, or this past weekend, 27-24. It was the wrong team that won by a field goal, unfortunately. But I have the Seahawks winning also in a close, down-to-the-wire nail-biter within a touchdown, like you said, but even narrower than what you said. I have the Seahawks eking it out. They're going to come back and right the wrongs from last week, and they're going to win in a nail-biter, 31-27 in Minnesota. So
sounds about right.
That's my hope, anyway, that we can get over 30 points again. We know we can do it. I think we can do it again, but less penalties, and they'll clean that up, and we'll be just enough to get the job done. All right, so we'll see what happens in this game. But before we wrap things up, I know I want to give you the last word. And the question I have for you is, now that we're going from the heat of summer, and we had a hot summer, both in terms of the real estate market and the temperatures, literally. But now that things are cooling down, is the market cooling down? So the question I have for you, Daniel, is this a good time to buy or sell? Tell me what people might be wondering about in terms of real estate.
Yeah, well, I'd like to address it from both sides for sure, because, everyone's in a different situation. So we get asked that question a lot in our team. Is now a good time to buy? Because we heard it was a seller's market. So going back to the spring, it was a super seller's market, right? We had super low inventory, not a lot available, right? And really low interest rates. So a lot of people were qualified to purchase, beautiful homes. And with not a lot to choose for, is simple supply and demand. So you had a lot of offers. Some people were offering hundreds of thousands of dollars over the list price, and there was a tremendous amount of competition, right? And so now what we're seeing as we went into the summer, that's a pretty normal time for things to slow down, as a lot of people go on vacation, right? They're enjoying their time with family, and people aren't touring as many homes as it was in the spring. The spring's a great time, like the homes look beautiful, right? And as we enter into winter, what we're seeing is that interest rates are slowly creeping up. So it's not as much of a seller's market, but because inventory is still low, it's still a good time to be a homeowner. Equity is building here in the Pacific Northwest. We have a lot of tech jobs, obviously. So the long and short of it is, if you're a seller, you're still in a great position because there's low inventory. If you're a buyer and you're going to wait for the market to crash, it might be a while. There's this real estate meme going around right now of Tom Brady, right? And it has pictures of him through the last 20 plus years. And it's like, if we're waiting for the market to crash, and then it shows Tom Brady's face continuing to be the same, right? So I don't think it's a good time to wait, 5-10 years and keep renting. If you're renting right now, there's a lot of statistical evidence to show that, within 3 years of home ownership, you're going to completely outweigh like your amount of equity that you're building versus what you're giving to a landlord. It's absolutely better to get into the market as soon as you can, in my opinion, especially because interest rates are supposed to go up even more in January. I'm hearing from my lender friends it could be as high as a quarter point by January, which makes a really big difference over the 30-year span. So in a nutshell, if you're thinking about buying, I think you should talk to a local lender and talk to a local realtor and see what's best for your situation. No pressure to buy right now. It's good to be armed with as much information. So specifically, now is a good time to buy a condo. Why? Because there's a lot of condos sitting on market in the greater Seattle area, especially downtown. It's generally good to buy when everyone's leaving a place, right? There's a lot of turmoil downtown over last year, and people are starting to come back now. So there's a lot of opportunities in the condo market. In my opinion, it's not a great time to compete with 10 people in a great neighborhood in a beautiful craftsman home in Seattle. In my opinion, unless you're ready to shoot for the moon. As a seller, now is a really good time to explore how you can cash in on your investment. That's my long and short of it. I hope that's helpful for you people out there.
All right. Again, my special guest and sponsor and partner with NorbCam, Daniel Dovinh of Dovinh Real Estate Group at Sotheby's. Daniel, appreciate you being on here with your insight for the Seahawks as well as the real estate market. And we'll be doing this every week. So looking forward to having you again on the next episode of The Dive In with Dovinh.
Thank you so much, and go Hawks.
All right, go Hawks.